Well, the Charlotte protests over the death of George Floyd touch far more aspects of American life than just civil rights. And tonight, 8 men came together here in Charlotte to give you a lens as to what it's like to be a black man in 2022. And we head to the place where black men are known to speak their mind, the Barbershop.
And the guy sits in my chair. What we talk about is between us. And it is a black man's country club. I didn't grow up in a well-to-do neighborhood, but I went to well-to-do schools. Elementary, middle school, with junior high school, and high school. And the reason I went to those schools because blacks would bust into those schools, but they were the best schools in Charlotte. I'm from Charlotte, okay? I didn't really realize that the black thing didn't hit me until I was in the Army. When I experienced the most racism, okay? Yeah, I was proud to be a U.S. soldier, but at the same time I faced a lot of racism. You just carry on. And really that racism that I faced forced me to be where I am today as a self-employed business owner. And that was 27 years ago.
What does your lens look like to be a black man in 2022?
Well, I think for me it was different because, I grew up in Pageland, first of all, about an hour from here, right down 74, and in a very segregated, racist place. I got 10 brothers and sisters, and
10 brothers and sisters?
Yeah, 11 of us, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, big family.
10 brothers?
Yeah.
What is family reunions like?
It's amazing, great food. I mean, you don't get this big,
It's a buffet, that's right.
Yeah, it was great.
Lots of space going around.
But yeah, I mean, so, I seen it, but sports seem to hide a lot of it because, I was accepted even in high school in that little town because of what I did on the court, all-state basketball player, football field base, so it was like I was accepted by white people. And you get into this whole, and I think I had blinders on because I probably didn't experience some of the things the other guys did, because you're around white people all the time. I'm going to eat steak dinner. I never had a steak until, white people stay. My mama could stay. Don't look like that. You know what I'm saying? So all guys got blood running. I'm like, oh, what is that? So I'm getting introduced to all this stuff because of what I, did on the football field.
It's an interesting question because, I tell everybody I'm a late bloomer, and it's really true because, the experience of growing up as one of the only black kids in the school and, being uneasy about dating, not able to, date this person. There are even certain situations where one of my friends who was a white guy was dating a girl and the girl said, okay, you guys can come pick me up, but Ron can't come to the door, right? And silly me went on and stayed in the car, when I should have just stayed home, right? So I basically graduated high school with this kind of sense of being a second-class citizen because of that experience. Well, I was as smart and worked as hard and a good athlete, but I still didn't have some of the privileges that my classmates did. So, it took, Morehouse and FAMU to undo a lot of that, negativity.
For me, as a young black man, now I'm 21, about to graduate college, my sentiments lie within, I think, what the Apostle Paul says, sorrowful but always rejoicing, because while I appreciate and I'm grateful to God that I am a black man, it hurts that with all of the knowledge and wealth of wisdom and experience that's within this room right now, when we leave here, this moment is not going to be appreciated. That we've got lawyers, business owners, preachers, retired athletes, but when we step out into, and a retired vet, right? But when we step out into the world and into this nation that we have to live in and defend and serve in, they don't see that.
Get back.
I was checking into a hotel and there was a white lady in front of me and an older white lady behind me. And the clerk finished with the white lady in front of me. And then he looked around me and he said, "Ma'am, can I help you?" And I looked and I said, am I a potted plant? Do you not even see me? And the lady behind me said, he was next. He's in front of me. And I told my host, and they were so embarrassed they couldn't believe it. And I'm going, but this is what it means to be black. And this is the first time you've experienced this, not the first time I've experienced it. And it gets to how do you deal with trying to just exist and get along and do what you do better than everybody else and work hard when the first thing that people see sometimes is the fact that you're black. But it's not something I shy away from. I'm proud to be black. Went to Howard, I enjoy it. I go out and I talk to kids all the time about what it means to be black, what they have to do to be better. One of the only things that I'm worried about is that we have come so far past civil rights that now when we did Black Lives Matter, I'm talking, I'm speaking, and there's so many people that remember Martin Luther King because he made a speech, but that's about it. They don't know anything other than that. And I had to tell some of the other elected officials, we have to stop referring back to Martin Luther King and Malcolm because people don't know who they are. And it's not a reference point anymore.
Get back.
My situation is a little different than Corey, even though our lives are pretty much the same. But I'm not a preacher.
We'll work on that. Use them, Lord. Use them.
I am a PK.
Okay.
I just went through, I didn't play football in like grade school, and I didn't play till my senior year, so I was quote unquote just a regular guy my whole life, so I was able to just really kind of watch, see how things were done. I actually had an experience with the police officers, some officers my freshman year in college, and everybody has had some kind of run-in with the law. But mine was with 3 black cops in Charleston, and I just knew what they did to me wasn't right. I didn't know my rights. I just knew they stopped me. I asked the officer what was going on, why did he stop me? And he just unclipped his gun holster and said, get your off this ground, get out this car and put your face on the ground. And I was just like, man, what's up? He said, I'm not gonna tell you again. So I got out, I was on the ground, face on the concrete. They never told me what was going on. They just arrested me. They took me in, and they didn't book me. But my cousin was with me, and he had a warrant. He went to jail. So after that experience, I just knew that wasn't right. I went back to college, and I took an intro to criminal justice just so I could know my rights, just how to interact with the cops. And I've had, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 incidents over the years after that. And I just, just knew how to interact.
But it's interesting that you don't define that as an incident, whereas that never happens to a white person. They're not told to get out of a car and put their face in the concrete and taken to jail and then have to go and take, but because you don't see it that way, they would be mortified if their son had to do that. They'd have to fire the whole entire police department. Yep. And I remember the first time a white lady came to my office and she said, the Richland County Sheriff's Department came to my house the other day and they rang the doorbell. And when I went to the doorbell, they said they had a warrant to search the house. I said, they rang the doorbell?
Right.
She said, yeah. I said, they don't ring doorbells. But this is a white lady.
Exactly.
They were searching her house, and that's how they operate. Normally, they kick down the door, they tear everything up in the house, they take everybody to jail, they leave the door off the hinges,
or kill you in your sleep.
And they kill, and that's our experience. But you don't recognize it as being something that should not happen to you.
No, I admit that should not have happened, but my experience was those were 3 black cops.
Exactly.
But that's not the issue. It's a power thing, and it's because you're black that your power structure is weaker. They don't treat white kids like that because in doing so, the fear is they're going to get fired. The fear is their boss is going to call them in and say something to them.
I think it's also important too how you interact with the cops.
Like you talked about, when I got my first Mercedes and I was driving around, I got pulled over 3 times in one day.
3 times?
Yeah, not because I was speeding, not because it was like, what do you do? How can you afford this car? So you start to experience that factor. But still, I'm guilty. And I talked to you earlier about this of not seeing what my brothers or my cousins or just a normal black guy what he experienced. And and I just really woke up last 5 or 6 years ago. Just like, man, this is real.
Yeah.
I know we had those kind of dudes that didn't like that I was dating a white girl, but but man, the whole George Floyd, all the other stuff have opened my eyes to so much more. And I think, and I'm guilty. And I actually said to myself one day, I got to go apologize to some other brothers, because for so many years I didn't see it because I was blinded by money, I was blinded by fame, I was blinded by success, and not knowing that, man, these other brothers really. I mean, I'm still black. You know, and I think I found out a little bit more after I retired, and you know, you wasn't the fanfare was kind of gone. You still just a black man. You know, you could be just a rich black man or a big black, but you black. You know what I mean?
The conversation's just getting heated. We head back to Anthony's Barbershop here in Charlotte after this break.
Because if you're saying you kind of woke up with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and the more things that we're seeing now, is there a difference now that you are opening your eyes?
I tell my wife right now, like, I don't want to drive at night. I'm operating in fear. It's bad. Not that I've done anything wrong. I don't have drugs in the car, but you know, I wear hoodie, I wear joggers, I might throw on some Jordans. I'm just a normal black guy now, and I'm afraid. So I only travel during the day most of the time, unless I'm going somewhere close. And as I was sharing with a lot of white friends of mine who didn't understand that, because they don't have an issue getting in their car going wherever they want to go. No. They don't think twice about it, right? I wouldn't jump in my car right now and drive to Atlanta. I wouldn't, just because of the fear of what if. What if? I'm a big dude, I get pulled over, they can say I did whatever, I got something, you know, and here I'm in a situation. And that really scares me. It scares me for my two boys.
My dad is an attorney as well. And he would always tell me that, you know, when you get pulled over, the cops are jury, judge, and executioner. So like, when you get pulled over, I would always have to roll down the windows. Like, he would teach me these things, that roll down the windows, put your hands on the dashboard. Those are things that other cultures don't have to deal with. Keep your hands in plain sight, you know, yes sir, no sir, because no matter what, my dad's job for his 3 black sons was to live to the next day. I got pulled over in Atlanta, Georgia. I was following my brother to a club, and I got pulled over. We were in an area, we were trying to find this place, and we were on our way, and I get pulled over. My brother gets pulled over. Now he's got at this point he had a Suburban with some rims on it. Now my brother is a very educated black male, Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated. He got pulled over, and I turned around to go look for him. So I get pulled over for braking too hard. So my options at that point, now I'm going under the speed limit, but I was braking too hard. 25 mile an hour zone. And I get pulled over, and my options at this point were either, what kind of drugs do you have in the car? That was the second question asked. What kind of drugs do you have in the car? I'm with my friend in the car. I'm like, look, I need to call my attorney. He's like, you have 2 options. You're either going to sit here until we get a warrant. Now, meanwhile, what have I done? As you said before, where your friend had a warrant for him. But what was the probable cause for the stop in the first place? So therefore, they're like, either you can sit here for hours while I get a warrant and ruin the rest of my day, or you can just search the car. Now, I know there's no drugs in the car. So I let them search it, but I'm out here as a black man on the side of the curb because I was braking too hard. So let's just say I did have something illegal, a little pinch of weed or something like that in the car. Now I'm facing charges, drug charges, for braking too hard. I do respect, I have great friends that are police officers, and I really respect them, and we talk back and forth, but they do not know, and I try to educate them on what it is like being a black man, because that's, as you are a pastor and you're educating people in the prison, I like to meet with other cultures to talk about the differences. Like, yeah, that was kind of racist, and they're okay with hearing that from me because the way I talk. You know, I've had friends that say, I love how you can talk to white people because you're not aggressive.
And that for me is where
That you talk white. Like, what is talking white?
Right, and that for me is the issue.
That is upsetting.
Because it's not my job to continue to educate you on things that you just ought to know. When you hear experiences like with Rob talking about how, hey, like, my face is put on the ground and it's by 3 black police officers, that experience or that encounter that you had deals with the power structure, right, that is within most police departments across America, which is that I've got to, in this instance, when interacting with a black male, I've got to make you feel this big. I've got to make you feel inferior. That's completely absurd. And so when white people are saying things like, well, I like the way you talk, or you're not aggressive, why wouldn't I be aggressive if when my mom, in talking to me about getting a car, breaks down in tears because she knows that now that I'll be able to drive on my own, there are some rules and some lessons that we've got to go through, techniques as to how to have an ID and your registration. Do you have it too far up there on the dashboard? Can I have it right beneath? Like, there are techniques that we've got to apply just to drive. And at what point do we as black men have the freedom to be as aggressive as we want, because it is our experience? And it hurts when people who are adding the antithesis to your story are trying to dictate and structure and frame how you tell it.
We have to teach our children to know better, to not have this expectation of entitlement that they get to do anything they want and still go home at night. Yes, there are a lot of racist cops out there, but there are a lot of cops that go out there and do their job, and when they pull somebody over, what they're not expecting to get is somebody yelling at them and telling them how to do their job. That's not how it goes, but more importantly, how we treat each other. That black men are owed a duty by other black men as well, that they want to go home just because they went to the club doesn't mean that they need to die that night or get shot that night or get shot at that night.
Continuing the conversation on being a black man in 2022. What you'll hear next, we do want to warn you, may be graphic as this conversation gets a little heavier as the men discuss mental health and the problems in the black community. You'll also hear from South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn as he joins the conversation. We'll be right back.
My fear, honestly, is some of the stories that I hear from the 15-year-old in Aiken that was going to be charged with murder, and they had shot a classmate of theirs, Dave, 4 of them in the car. And I said, well, why'd you have a gun? He said, we all got guns. What do you mean? Wow. And I said, well, at 15 years old, he said, I've been carrying guns since I was 12. That's what we do. And the number of cases that I have now, literally across the state, young kids, young black kids, charged with killing other black people with firearms. And it's a rage, it's an intensity that they don't seem to be able to calm themselves down. The one last week that I did a bond setting for, he was getting in his car and his cousin, they were leaving the club together. Didn't have an argument with anybody. His cousin, right before he got in the car, turned around and shot back and allegedly killed somebody standing in front of the club. It is not always the police that are our problems. Sometimes it's us. And I have noticed as of late, this not caring about life, this cold heart that allows people to do things and not consider the consequences, not even be able to see them. But I listen to the music now and I listen to the lyrics, and it's about robbing, and it's about guns, and it's about sticking a gun in somebody's face and taking what they got. And you know, to CJ, who's a DJ, I don't know whether that's going to be the problem moving forward, that this music is driving us to believe that gunplay is okay, that robbing and shooting and killing people is okay. But when I have a client who allegedly robbed this lady and took $100,000 from her and posted it on social media that he took $100,000 from somebody, allowing the police to come and arrest him, the foolishness, A, that he would do that, but the world that we live in, that you feel driven to show your success by telling other people that you did a lick and that you got this kind of money, there's a sickness. And it's going to impact all of us, whether we realize it or not.
But also, if you look at the data, people from this community have the most difficult time to move out of poverty.
Yeah.
You know, there was a study that said Charlotte was 40 of 40 of the largest U.S. cities around moving from the poorest part of the population out of that group.
How do we bring mental health into this conversation? For being a black man in 2022, how do you manage your mental health? Knowing all of this that we have discussed, everybody can take this.
Starting with panels like that.
Right. I have a whole therapist. Like, I talk to my
Not a
therapist.
half of one?
No, an entire complete therapist. Like
Bigger one.
I've got to, because number one, with all that we talked about tonight, and the general consensus being that it is definitely hard being a black man in America, even if we had to grow into that reality. There's got to be a restoration, I think, of the black home. And what does that look like in restoration? Not only getting back what's lost, but redefining it, reshaping it, including and implementing the need to talk to somebody about things that are impacting you in the home. If there's one thing that I would want people of the opposite side, because it's not just white people who don't understand racism, you have black people who don't understand interpersonal racism.
A lot of the problems that I have even today are not with white people, not with Republicans, but black people who want to stab each other in the back, who feel like that crabs in the bucket mentality is the only way they can make it, by dragging somebody else down. And it's sad. And so when you look around and you see other successful black people, you can generally ask them, did a white person help you? Has a white person been in your life, influential, making a way for you? And not just making it all the time or dragging you all the way up, but just at some point making something easier so that you could take those next steps in order to better your life.
I preach at a lot of places, but 90% of the places I go preach is going to be heavily white churches. I don't get a lot of the big black churches calling me to speak to their young black men.
Yeah.
You making 3 points, you got 1 point. You're still in college. I've really enjoyed the whole HBCU experience because it really helped me on a lot of different fronts. But the thing where it helped me the most was I was just confident in who I am as a man. And I have no fear of driving at night. I don't have any of those things. I understand if I'm with somebody who's a law enforcement, I understand the power that he has. And I don't talk down to him, but I also kind of understand and know my rights and how things should be. And I just try to diffuse the situation. So is everything in this country the way it should be? Of course not. I mean, it's crazy we're still talking in 2022 about some of the things that's going on and how those 3 racist murderers killed that young man down in
Ahmaud Arbery.
Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia, and their case started today, and just all the things that's coming out. No, those are racist, and they exist, all right? But everybody, I just feel we are more alike than not, and I just try to lead by example.
Think about what it means to be successful, and that it is not selling drugs, it's not going to jail, and it's not being this hard guy that went out and committed this crime. Because that hard guy that you see on TV, being all hard, when I see him in jail, he's in tears because he can't go home to his mama. And one of the biggest problems I think we have is that our dreams are based on what we see every day, and what we see now are rappers. What we see now, and nothing against you all, but you're football players. Well, you're less likely to be a football player than you are to be anything else and make it to the NFL. So why not use your mind to make it? And what does that mean? What does that look like? Dream big. Dream big.
Well, guys, thank you so much for allowing us to be able to see what it's like for a black man in 2022. And now Congressman Jim Clyburn has a message as we move forward.
Buckle up, study your history, and just know that anything that's happened before can happen again. I'm the 9th African-American to serve in Congress from South Carolina. There were 8 before me. The big problem is there's 95 years between number 8 and number 9. Why? Because the Supreme Court changed. Voters changed. Voting laws changed. The same kind of changes that took place in the 1890s are taking place today. Buckle up and get ready for the fight.